should we expect to be happening within a learning set?
Well, within an action learning set, Andrew, there should be people discussing action that they're taking, or that they have taken, or that they're planning to take, based around real challenges that they face.
And how does that work? And is it in turns? Is it sequential?
Yeah, I think, well, it's a good question. I think, the first thing that a learning set needs to do when it sets up is establish some sort of agreement amongst the people in it as to how they're going to operate. So kind of talk about the psychological or learning contracts between them. And, particularly relevant is that point about turns. We tend to call it airtime. So the idea of each person has some airtime around their own issue. And typically, if you've got a learning set of 7 or 8 people, you need to work out the time frame, so that typically what happens otherwise is that the first couple of people take up most of the airtime, and other people feel they haven't had a good shot at it. So that's really important, I think, that everybody feels they've had a chance to discuss their own issue, and to get the support of the learning set in helping them work through some strategies to get to a point of agreeing what action are they going to take.
So broadly, if I was in a set, how much airtime would I expect to get, broadly speaking, to talk through my issue?
Well, it's a good question as well, because I think you might decide before you come along to a learning set how much airtime you want to pitch for. So you might go in and say, well, I think I'm going to ask for 10 minutes of airtime here, or 15 or 20 minutes. And, a bit of trial and error initially to see how it goes and experience it. But, what you should be doing within the set, ideally managed within the set, or possibly if it's early days by the supportive action learning facilitator, is working out the agenda. So you may say, in some cases where I'm working with clients and they give a whole day to an action learning set, and they will work out that each person gets quite a significant chunk of time, whereas some are much shorter. They just have a kind of a 1 hour. And in fact, I run a lot of action learning sets virtually using Zoom, etc. And within an hour we can actually process it and manage it so that each person gets some valuable airtime and support from people, albeit from a distance. So I think if you can meet face to face first, that's preferable, but these days it's not essential. I mean, you can actually do it virtually.
What's the logic of the composition of a group? Do you deliberately try and arrange people by whatever logic, or is it random, or what?
Well, good question. We when we set up some of the bigger programs that we run, we tend to use that very question as a kind of exercise early on. So if you're working with, say, a group of 20 people or so, you might say, right, the challenge now is to form into 2 or 3 groups, action learning sets. My preference usually is to ask the sets to work that out themselves. I mean, there's a core principle of action learning that the more the people do, the better it is, actually. And it establishes very early on, this kind of relationship is responsibility for your own learning, etc. So but I might give some guidance on that. Sometimes we talk about a max mix, so getting the maximum mix of people to get diversity, and they can determine what the criteria are. It may be a mix of professions or locations, etc.
And of course, learning comes almost laterally by that cross-team, cross-functional exposure.
Definitely, and I think the more diversity that you get into the group, the better it's going to be in the long run, so long as you go into it with the right frame of mind. So I think a key point for any facilitator of action learning is to create that right sort of mindset amongst people, so that they're going to be open to this way of learning. At the end of the day, you can talk to people about it endlessly as a great method, but they've got to experience it and do it to actually understand it.